So good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here with Remarkable today for our Skills for Growth event. Remarkable are working with us today through Skills Development Scotland, with whom we've got a strong relationship in the Rail Cluster Builder. We've been doing lots of good things with Skills Development Scotland on skills in the rail sector, which I'll talk about in a little minute, but a great organisation, and we're delighted to welcome Remarkable. So thanks so much for your time, Julie and Stevie. We held an introductory skills event back in May under the Rail Cluster Builder, and it covered skills for growth as an introductory session and a case study, and we also ran a session on the apprenticeship programmes. So this is a follow-on with a lot more detail and hearing it right from the horse's mouth, I think, can we say it like that? So I hope this will be of great use to you and you'll get some value from it. I think if it's possible, just while the speakers are speaking, to keep your mics on, keep your mics off, sorry, I was going to say on mute, so that for the recording it's not, there's no sort of rustling around, or if you're having, moving papers or whatever, so that'd be brilliant. If you've got any questions, as I said, raise your hand or post it in the questions section, but I think with such a small group, we're fine with just speaking, it's fine. As a quick thing, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Shona Clive. I'm project lead for the Rail Cluster Builder project, working here with the team at Scottish Engineering. I'm also chair of Women in Rail Scotland. We held a really good event this morning with Scottish Engineering for International Women in Engineering Day. We had 3 fantastic women engineers speaking and telling us about their career journey, so that was brilliant. My previous role was head of marketing and communications at Babcock's Rail Business. I was there for 24 years. So we were just laughing, saying I think I was maybe a wee bit institutionalized. I'd been there so long earlier when we logged on today. As I've talked about the recording, so that's fine. Just a little bit about the rail cluster in case you don't know anything about it. It's an 18-month project funded by Scottish Enterprise and the European Regional Development Fund, as well as Transport Scotland. We've got several aims, but our main aim is to connect SMEs in the engineering and manufacturing sectors in Scotland, looking to diversify into rail or growing their presence within the sector by linking them up with the relevant organisations within the rail sector. So it's tangible links for SMEs into the rail sector is one of our key roles. We also are very keen to share knowledge and understanding about the rail sector with SMEs so that they've got a better understanding of how to get into the sector in terms of supplier assurance and all these good things that you need to know. The context of the Rail Cluster project is the Rail Decarbonisation Action Plan. It was launched in July last year. It's the aim of which is to deliver carbon neutral rail transport for passenger transport by 2035, which sounds like it's quite a while off, but it's not really. It's also to make Scotland a leader in creating a net zero emission passenger railway. So really, really exciting stuff behind the project. We're about 10 months into this project, and I'm just going to quote some numbers just so that you get a flavour of what we've achieved so far in our progress. So we've got nearly 700 individual members registered with the Rail Cluster from 435 different organisations. 210 out of the 435 are SMEs from a huge variety of backgrounds: marine, oil and gas, renewables, aerospace, automotive, a huge variety. We keep getting SMEs joining, which is fantastic. Last month we had 15 new companies joining us, which is great. It's showing that the level of interest is continuing. The rail sector's got lots of opportunity in at the moment for SMEs to diversify into. There's a huge programme of electrification in the making and has already commenced actually to meet the green targets. There's big enhancement projects taking off, and the Scottish rail sector is looking much more closely at supporting local employment and local businesses, particularly smaller ones with new ideas that they might not otherwise have thought of. So it's really quite an exciting time in rail. To be perfectly honest, when I started this project, I had no clue about the breadth of skills and expertise right here in Scotland on our doorstep. I was probably quite tunnel visioned with what we knew and what the supply chain was like in the rail sector. So just a tiny bit about this, the link with Skills Development Scotland, because this is quite an interesting thing. We've been working with Skills Development Scotland and supporting them in a piece of work that they've commissioned, which is looking at the level of skills in the rail sector now in Scotland versus what's required to meet all these new opportunities going forward. And they've appointed a consultant who's run a study on it, and the report's going to be out in July, which we hope to share with all the rail cluster members. And hopefully it will give an indication of areas that are really important for investment in skills. So that's the link in with Skills Development Scotland, and this is another a session that supports skills development. So with nothing, I'm going to stop now. I think that's plenty from me. I think you're here to hear about the programme, and I'd like to welcome Julie and Stevie. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you, Shona. So I'll pop on some slides. Everybody see that okay? Give me a wee shout out. You can see that all right, Julie?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity for us to come together and join the network this morning. And great to hear that that report's imminent, Shona, because obviously that will give great insights. And I'm sure what we'll learn today is that we've got something to help you with. So what we'd like to do is run you through a short presentation on the features and benefits of the Skills Development Scotland Skills for Growth programme. So my name's Stevie McQuillan from Remarkable, and I'm joined with my colleague and co-presenter Julie, and together over the last 5 years we've delivered many Skills for Growth projects with companies length and breadth of the whole of Scotland, many in multi-sectors. So we'd like to run you through a short presentation that will lead us up to a comfort break, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions and even to become an instant sign-up or indeed request a follow-up. You may be aware of the Flexible Workforce Development Fund, and for the first time the Flexible Workforce Development Fund is available to all Scottish employers, including SMEs. And whilst these things normally come with criteria and timelines, we often have seen that from the onset of the pandemic that the direction of the fund has changed and expanded. So focusing on upskilling the workforce to retain jobs and also thinking about new reality working. So the great things that have happened there, which has been good to see, is that from some changes to the fund where private sector training providers, then you can engage with them via Skills Development Scotland for those of you who are levy payers, or indeed for small to medium-sized enterprises, you can access up to 5k of training delivered by colleges and universities on a first-come, first-served basis. But like many of these things, there's usually time constraints, which are certainly July and August. Julie had done some checking on this, and there's obviously some information imminent on that's continuation. But the great thing about the Flexible Workforce Development Fund is it really gives you, access to a resource then to support skills that have been uncovered. And part of the work that we do is helping you get a real sense of where's the business going, what are the challenges that you find in the business from a skills perspective. So we'll cut through the long grass and do some of this work for you, by helping you synthesise that, bring clarity to it. And if the Flexible Workforce Development Fund is the right place to signpost you, then we would do that and help you with those links. So in summary, something that's really beneficial and something that we can talk to you more about. So you may well be asking, so what is Skills for Growth then? Well, quite simply, from Julie and I, you'll have the opportunity through Remarkable to receive a fully funded engagement where we work with you to understand what's currently happening in the organisation, uncovering needs related to skills, and then helping you to create that, to be housed within a plan that actually says, what's the priority? What do we need to do now? What do we need to do later on? And we'll create a sort of insight support with you. But that insight support won't just be the kind of standard thing that you say, well, here's a list of things to do. We also like to include some tools or techniques for instant use in there. And the great advantage of that is it reduces your time, and we're doing some of the work with you and for you. And we also signpost you to resources within the public sector or indeed the private sector that could help you deal with the matters that we've uncovered. So in terms of progressing with Skills for Growth, we'll help you to increase performance. So by working with you, and I'll explain the methodology in a moment, We help you uncover needs by reviewing systems, processes, establishing if there are any enablers or blockers to you increasing that performance, and then taking a real torch to look at the skills that are required for you to do that. That will then help us to build your confidence and the confidence of the workforce by aligning training and development needs with the business, so that you can actually see where there'll be a tangible difference if we moved forward with this. And in many ways, that will then help you to retain maybe the current workforce and develop that talent, maybe and for some in a digital world, and exploring what that means. And we've got products and services that we can signpost to you, and I'll touch on some of those later in the presentation. Part of the Skills for Growth process also enables you to think about, well, skills will be one dimension, but managing change in workplace innovation or culture, as some people like to say. So we'll help you with ideas on how you might do that. And as I say, I'll explain the methodology in a moment of how we go about it. The bottom line basically is that we'll support you to deliver change, I suppose, in the organisation, and align that to the Fair Work principle. Some of you may be familiar with those, and that's the government's Fair Work framework, which really talks about employee voice. So the methodology that we use is that this is supported and targeted to businesses based in Scotland between 5 and 250 employees. And how does it work? Well, hopefully today, from instant sign-ups or those who want a follow-up, what we'll do is we then signpost you to my colleague in Skills Development Scotland who'll meet with you to originally scope out and explore a project that we could focus on. And once that's done, then you'll either meet Julie, myself, or another consultant from Remarkable, who will then build on that work and we'll hone in on, right, what is it we're going to look at? What is it we're going to try and uncover for you? And then when we uncover these things, it gives us a real opportunity to sense what's the impact of what we've uncovered in the business, and then point that towards solutions. So basically this happens over a period of time. So from an initial scoping meeting to then agreeing how we're going to work or what we're going to work on. Then what we'll do is we meet a proportional representation of your staff structure by agreement and look through 4 lenses. So the 4 lenses we look through is, so what's happening in the organisation? Excuse me. How clear is the business direction and travel? What is it we then need leaders to be doing to make that happen? What is it we need people to be doing to make that happen? And then introduce you to some, innovation techniques, which we'll also share in the presentation. Then house that within something that you can action and take forward with a straightforward sort of plan, which then maybe sets out priorities, but also points you to where solutions lie and where resources lie with your priorities to help you with that. So in many ways, we'll cut through the long grass. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Julie now, who's going to chat us through the 7 reasons that you would benefit from the Skills for Growth programme.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stevie. So hopefully it makes sense so far. As Stevie said, this is fully funded. So there is absolutely nothing, there's no check or no invoice going to be sent to you. These are the questions that we regularly get. They're like, why? Like, what is the catch? What is the drawback? There honestly isn't one. The only thing that we need from you is your time. And I just want to talk to you about, oh no, where did the slides go? Stevie, can you pick slides back up?
Sure.
So yeah, I just want to talk to you about why this is a worthwhile investment of your time. So the first one, Stevie, I'll just let you control the slides so that we don't, so I think that might have been me, apologies. So the first thing is that one of the consultants that would come in to work with you brings fresh eyes into your business. We absolutely get that when you're in the thick of it, it can be really difficult to see the wood for the trees. It can be difficult to see things that maybe are pretty straightforward fixes, things that can make your business an even better place to work. Just taking that time of bringing us in, letting us chat to yourselves and your team can generate some things that have maybe been bubbling around in your head anyway, but we can help to really kind of pull those out for you and help to prioritize the things that are really going to move your business forward. Next slide, please, Stevie. I'll do the Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance thing. Next slide, please, Stevie. So the next thing that we can do is share best practices. As Stevie said, we've been doing this for a long time, and we've worked with loads of companies, like right from the kind of bottom to the top of Scotland. We are in such a privileged position because by working with small companies like yourselves, we're able to see the things that you're doing brilliantly, and all companies are doing some things brilliantly. So with permission, what we do is we share those best practices. So you know, if you have, so for example, yesterday I was working with a company that are going through a rapid period of organizational change, and they're in the just the kind of horrible bit, the bit where everybody's feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and what we have seen are other companies that have easily come through the other side of this. As you'll know, organizational change is kind of a constant for any business now. So we're able to draw from that and say, in other businesses that are similar to yours, we've seen these types of techniques working really, really well to kind of move you, springboard you through the stage that you're in. So we're in, as I say, in that fortunate position where it is such a privilege to be able to kind of see behind the doors of businesses and to be able to share some of the brilliant things that are going on. Next slide, Stevie, please. So funding and grant support, as Stevie talked about right at the beginning, the Flexible Workforce Development Fund has been one of the massive pieces of funding that's been available this year for the first time to non-levy paying companies. There are new pieces of grant and funding being announced all the time. Stevie and I try to keep up to date with this. Like, there's a lot, isn't there? Like, every time the government stands up, there's something new that's been announced, especially over the last year. But this is where our relationship with our Skills Development Scotland colleagues is absolutely brilliant, because they know all about this. That anything that is announced from the government, SDS get that information immediately. So although Stevie and I have a good knowledge of it, our SDS colleagues absolutely keep us on point with this. So if there is something that you might benefit from in your business, between us, we will make sure that you know about it. And sometimes it can be really random. So when we're talking to you, the process is that we would come in or we would either come in or virtually speak to you about about where you are, like what's keeping you awake at night, what are your business goals. We try to get all that information at the beginning, and that would direct our conversations that we have with your team for the rest of the day. But we try to be as kind of open and unstructured with those conversations as possible, because just sometimes you might say something to us that where you would think, well, there can't possibly be funding for that. And there is. And sometimes it takes Stevie and I by surprise, because one of our SDS colleagues will go, yes, we can fund that. So for example, about a year ago, I was working with a small print company. And when I was asking, like, what would you absolutely love to do? If money was no issue here, what would you love to do? And the owner said to me, do you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to have a mindfulness sanctuary. So she's like, I've just been on this mindfulness course. It was not directly connected to obviously her business, but she said, I'd love to have something like that where my team could go and they could just like chill out and really kind of, protect their mental health. And my colleague from SDS went, yeah, we can give you £5,000 for that. And I was like, for a mindfulness sanctuary. So the point here is that this isn't a prescriptive service. Stevie and I are not going in here with a script where we're asking you very specific questions. There are areas that we explore with you because we know that there might be funding or support available, but we really want to have that kind of open conversation with you to say, what's the dream here? Where would you like to go? And then it's our job to see if there's any ways that we can help you to get there. Next slide, please, Stevie. So the brilliant thing about Skills for Growth is there's no catch. It's fully funded and it's an ongoing process. So the way that it works is that as Stevie said, Stevie kind of explained the structure a little bit earlier. When Stevie and I come in, so you will have an initial call with somebody from SDS with maybe one of us in on the call, and then we would have probably one diagnostic day, depending on the size of the company, one diagnostic day where we would basically spend all day speaking to yourself and your team. Off the back of that, then Stevie or I or one of the other consultants would produce a report. The report is not an assessment. It's not like a long, lengthy kind of document of all our conversations. It's a series of actionable recommendations. It's something that you can actually take and go, okay, this is useful. This will help me to kind of generate an action plan. We, depending on how the conversations go, we might come up with 25 or 30 things that we think you could do. And that's overwhelming, like we get it. So we make the point of saying to you right away, the report that we generate for you, we are not saying you need to do all those things, like that would just be far too much. But what we want to do is we want to say, look, here are some things that we think would be useful for you in the kind of knowledge that we have of your business. And then we have a feedback meeting with you and one of our Skills Development Scotland colleagues. And then what our job there is to go, right, see those 25 things that we suggested. What are the 3 or 4 things or 1 or 2 things you choose that you think would be really useful for you to progress with right now? And then our SDS colleague will draw up as a mini action plan, which will be much smaller than the report we generate for you, a mini action plan. And they help you to deliver that. So Stevie and I step back from the process at that point, or whoever the consultant would be. But your relationship with the SDS advisor goes on indefinitely for as long as you want it to. And what's fantastic about that is, so say you did say, I would love some money for a mindfulness sanctuary, and there wasn't a budget right now, which I don't think there is. Random, but just to use it as an example. When we have that conversation with the SDS consultant, even if there's nothing available right now, they're aware of that. Now, say in a month's time, somebody in the government stands up and says, we've got this new fund that can be used for creative spaces in work, and they think that that might meet your needs, they'll pick up the phone to you. So this isn't just a one and done. This is an ongoing relationship where you really don't have to kind of get embroiled in what funding is being released that might be relevant to my business. You won't miss out on anything because you'll have this ongoing relationship with your SDS consultant, which is invaluable in my opinion. Next slide, please, Stevie. The other thing that happens when we come in to talk to your team is people love it. Like, people really, really enjoy the opportunity. So when we're speaking to your team, we phrase everything positively. So just to be really clear, like, we are not saying to any members of your team, you know, like, what's wrong here? We're not digging for, we're not allowing them to moan, basically. That's not what it's all about. We're asking them about their story. We're asking them how long they've worked there, their experience of working in your organization. But we're asking them kind of positively loaded questions. So we ask them things like, you know, what could be even better? You know, what could make this an even better place to work? Tell me your ideas. And we try to gather, and that, just being asked that question helps your employees know that you care, and that's so important. And there are loads of companies. I mean, we'll get on to this at the end. I can't see any reason why any company would not do Skills for Growth, because honestly, it's just such a brilliant resource from the government. But there are companies that don't want to do it, and they tend to be the companies that maybe just don't value their teams as much, or are not so keen for kind of people to speak to their teams. So when you decide to go down the Skills for Growth route, first of all, it says something about you as an employer, but it also shows your employees that you care and you're really trying to make the organisation even better for them. So we usually find at the end of the diagnostic day that your team are kind of messaging you and saying, I really enjoyed that. So we try to make it a fun experience. Whenever you ask your team, and then whenever the action plan is decided and you go back out to them and you say, this is what we're going to do, you've already got the buy-in because they told you that in the first place, like channeled through us. So if you say, here's the change I'm going to make, they're already bought into that. They already feel involved because that information has come from them in the first place. So it's a really nice way to make any changes in your organisation. And next one, Stevie, please. It is fully funded. I know Stevie said this at the beginning. I know I started with this. it's the question we get asked over and over again. What's the catch? What's the catch? Is there definitely no bill in the post? Are you just doing this because you're trying to sell your training off the back of it? It's none of those. This is fully funded by the government. We have to be, when we will make recommendations to you if we think there's a need, but we have to make sure that we're using any public funding that's available to you, that we're tapping into any grant funding. And we can suggest other things around that, but we're certainly not going in there going, we can do everything for you. We have to suggest a variety of things. That's the government contract that we've got. So it's not, there's nothing, this isn't a kind of a push or a sales pitch from consultants. It is just a document using our expertise that's going to help to move your business forward. Next one, Stevie. There genuinely is no catch. And I've put it in because that's exactly what people say when we do the feedback meeting. So every time we have a feedback meeting with a client now, I just say to them, so what did you think of that? And they're like, oh, it was brilliant. Like, I actually think without exception, everybody really appreciates and really, like, I got an email yesterday from somebody just saying, I can't actually believe how tailored this was to our organization. I thought it might be quite a generic intervention, and I'm really like, I'm so appreciative of the report you've created. So that's what we can do for you by spending the time speaking to your team. There's honestly no catch. Next one. So what we thought we would do is just share some hints and tips with you, and then we will, once Stevie and I finish this, we'll give you an opportunity to go and boil the kettle, grab yourself a coffee, and then we'll hang about and I'll answer any questions that we have for you. But you know how earlier I said one of the great things that Skills for Growth does is allows us to share best practices from other companies. So with permission, Stevie and I have a few best practices that we just want to share with you now. So the first one is processes, right? One of the things that we explore with every company, if you've got ISO or something like that, you probably have a lot of your processes documented. You may not have them all, though. Generally, when we kind of dig into this, it isn't all, even if you've got the accreditation, you may not necessarily have all the kind of periphery processes documented. It is critical to have things written down so that there's no key person dependency, so that when people go on holiday, they're not getting phone calls, etc. However, so generally we will explore that with you. You may be all over this, you may not. Some companies have nothing written down, some have really comprehensive processes. But where there is a need to document further processes, it's just often something that your team do not want to do, because why would they? So you kind of go, oh, we need to have, could you really document what you're doing? And your team will be like, yeah. Whether they'll do it or not is pretty debatable. So we've watched this kind of play out in a number of different companies until we came across this amazing company who were just all over this. So what they did was, so they had a series of processes, but they weren't, they felt they weren't written in a particularly user-friendly way, and they weren't being regularly updated. So the owner of one Scottish SME said to her team, right, every time you touch a process, every time you do anything and you have to reference a process, I want you to rewrite it in your own words every single time and resave it. So this was the announcement. After about a month, she went and checked to see how many people had done that, and no one had done it. She was like, why has no one done it? Well, because there was no recognition, there was no reward, there was not really anything in it for them, and everybody's busy. Like, people weren't trying to be difficult, they were just going, okay, there are other priorities here. So what she did was, she said, okay, I'm going to relaunch this, and I'm going to say at the end of every week, at 4:45 on Friday, we are going to have an award ceremony, and I am going to hand out an award for process of the week. And she's explaining this, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure. Honestly, you should see how excited her team got. And so she just buys a bottle of Prosecco. She had an office in Edinburgh, an office in Glasgow, and she streamed between the two offices. And she just picked one person who had rewritten a process. The difference when you recognize people, it doesn't have to be like, there wasn't a reward. I think actually everyone who got process of the week ultimately went to draw, and somebody got half-day holiday after 6 months or something. But it wasn't that. It was just the recognition and the focus on it. And as soon as that changed, I have never seen another company where everybody is fighting over themselves to be the ones to document the processes. So brilliant idea. Next one, Stevie, please. Another company that we worked with, it was an office-based company. What they did was so everybody had their work that they did in the day. And then when they finished that, they had this kind of bucket of tasks that had to be completed. So they weren't the top priority, but once you had finished your work for the day, everybody was to go to the bucket of tasks and they were to complete them. Nobody wanted to do that. The bucket of tasks wasn't particularly interesting, and everybody was expanding their work to fill their day. So the manager here came up with the genius idea of taking the bucket of tasks, which were just saved in a spreadsheet, printing each of the tasks out onto a piece of paper, folding them, putting them inside a balloon and blowing up the balloon. And on the wall of the premises, their working premises, they had a wall of balloons, and each balloon had a task in it, but some of the balloons had a reward in it, and some of the balloons had a kind of jeopardy in it. So what would happen was people would finish their work and they would say, I'm going to burst a balloon, and everybody would get up and they would stand around them and they would burst the balloon and they would get the piece of paper out. And if it was a task, that's what they did. And if it was, some sort of penance, then that's what they did. So there were things like they had to work on an extra half hour and that sort of thing, but people loved it. They just thought it was really funny. And in terms of the rewards, it was just things like, you could get a sandwich from, the sandwich man that was coming round or whatever. But once again, making it fun, putting the focus on it, it just completely changed everybody's energy around it. And that bucket of tasks just needs to be replenished all the time now, because we're all just basically grown-up toddlers. People couldn't wait to finish their work to burst the balloon. The next one, Stevie. So one more, and then I'm going to hand back to Stevie, who's got some great things to add. Final one, I was working with a housing, not housing association, it was more of a kind of a housing rental organisation. And one of the challenges that they had was for their call team was that no one wanted to take the calls about water leaks or water damage, because when someone phoned up about that, so if you had an owner or a tenant phoning up about that, there was a lot to do. If it was just like the door was broken, then you just needed to phone the joiner. But if it was a leak, you had to phone like the plaster and the plumber. And anyway, so it was quite a big task. So their team were sort of fighting over each other not to take the calls about leaks. And when we went in to chat to them, the supervisor of the team had said, I usually say to people, see if I could wave a magic wand, what would you change? And she said this. And so what she did was, so we had a bit of a chat. What she did was she decided that she was going to have a leak of the week competition. Again, cheesy. What she did was she went out to the supermarket and she bought an actual vegetable leek, obviously spelt slightly differently, but it sounds like leek. And she came back in and she said to the team, right, whoever deals with the most leak calls this week is going to win leak of the week. Sounds ridiculous. You should have seen the excitement about passing this leak around. Who's going to get the leak next time? They started fighting over who actually took the leak calls. All of these are just small examples of when you recognise and reward people, they will do the things you want them to do. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be financial reward. It just needs to be noticed, because really we're all just big kids that are looking for attention. And when you can find a fun way to get your team to do those tasks that they're maybe not necessarily that keen on doing, it just makes your life so much easier. Stevie, I'll pass back to you for your ones. Stevie, you're on mute.
You hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks, Julie. So hearing the stories behind that, just so infectious. And so as I was saying, by looking through the 4 lenses, folks, in terms of the approach, so what is the organisation's ambitions, what's it trying to do, what do we need people and leaders to be doing? But then when we come to that 4th lens on workplace innovation, this is a really interesting story. So yes, we offer fun stuff that Julie's been chatting about there, but also really meaningful recommendations with grounded advice. So here's an example of a Lanarkshire business who were a play and education facility. But I'd also uncovered that they had a cafe element that they really hadn't exploited its full potential. And there was a kind of real downplay for them because they were caught up in the whole, COVID lockdown. So using a service called Digital Boost through Business Gateway, it signposted and worked with the SDS advisor, Skills Development Scotland advisor, where we highlighted and scoped out there was a potential new service sitting in this business that they hadn't really, thought about. And that was, whilst in the early lockdown, there were lots of managers and, I know we're coming back to, work now, but during that time, there's a lot of line managers, whilst they were doing things like this and on a platform like this, introducing the, let's have a blair in the bun or some kind of social interaction. We had the recognition piece that Julie had talked about, where the afternoon tea arrived in a box at your door. So what they did was they launched a service, and we helped them do this through the Skills for Growth because we scoped it out. We helped them with the recommendations, and then they launched an afternoon sort of tea service for line managers and different organisations. Now you might think, gosh, what's that got to do with engineering? Well, there could be a link there, but the point being that we would help you uncover maybe something that you could exploit more, or you could be focusing more as you try to sell in and around engineering, or indeed in the rail cluster. Because this business, within a 6-month period, then enjoyed a 20% increase in revenues. And that all came from just us having discussions and exploring actually what the business could be, or elements of the business could be, rather than what it is. So I think it's a really good example of, as we look through the different lenses and come up with new things that you could try or be thinking about. Another example was an organisation had said to me, we quite like to do whiteboarding or idea generation, and we've got one of these things in the office, but none of us are in the office now. So I was able to point them to an electronic version of this, where they can use online post-its, as you can see from the slide there, and how they could remotely connect with teams in a more creative way, or have teams that could remotely work, but they could actually do things with templates. So using a platform like you see there, we introduced them to that, and there's actually a free element to this platform, and they were able to instantly, so that was something they could do instantly on the back of the Skills for Growth outcome. And taking that forward, I'm hearing from that company that they've now bought a license into this sort of platform, that they can do this, and they're doing lots of things with it. So remote idea generation for maximising engagement. So there's opportunities for there too. So these are just some examples of the things that could come out from the Skills for Growth activity. So a quick summary of, before we go to that comfort break, is that you signpost, we connect with then a Skills Development Scotland advisor, who originally will scope out the focus. You would then work with somebody from Remarkable, either Julie or I or one of our other colleagues. We'll fine tune that, and then by looking through these 4 lenses, we'll help you uncover needs, point you to solutions, cut through the long grass of what's potentially available out there for you, and then house this all within something that you can action immediately, or things that you can then action on an ongoing basis. So before we get to the let's do it bit, I think Julie maybe suggested that we have a small comfort break. So I'm going to hand back to maybe Shona to do that, and then when we come back, we can talk about any questions or things that you may wish for us to chat more about, and then we can discuss about anybody that wants to sign up or our next steps. Is that all right, Shona?
Yeah, no problem at all. So it's about that. By the way, it's such an interesting presentation. So thanks so much, and I love your enthusiasm for it. You're both really engaged with it, so it's great. I hope it's been useful for people. It's 11:45, so how about if you fancy grab a cup of tea or coffee or a comfort break, and we come back in 5-10 minutes. So maybe 10 to 5:02. And if you've got any questions, and please feel free to ask, or if you want to have a bigger conversation with Stevie or Julie, then they'll be here for you. And if you've got what you need from the course, the session today, then we've recorded it, and we'll also send out Julie and Stevie's contact details. If you think of something later on in the day or next week or whenever, you can contact them and ask them if you don't want to stay on and you've got things to do today. So we'll have a wee break just now, and we'll be back at 10 to 5 to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go and grab a coffee actually, so I'll be back in a wee minute.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Just going to top up my water.
Hi there.
Hi, Shona.
What time is it? I'm a wee bit earlier. It doesn't really matter. I don't know if anybody's got any questions or they would like to speak to Julie and Stevie. You're more than welcome. Just you can either put your camera on and just ask, or whatever, in whatever way you want, if you've got anything in particular that you're interested in.
Hi, Julie, Stevie, this is Michelle. That was a great session. Thanks very much. I didn't know that that was an available service, you know, that was fully funded. And I do have a, you know, someone I work with from Skills Development Scotland, albeit we haven't actually spoke for probably the best part of a year, you know, for the reasons that we know. So that's really good to hear, and I've made a lot of notes because it is something I would like to discuss with our leadership team, definitely based on there's a huge period of transitional change we're going through. There'll be a huge transition from that, and I think this would be really good to help almost bridge that and make sure we're going. I don't mean make sure we're going in the right direction. Make sure what we do, there might be ideas that you know of from a best practice point of view that could actually steer us, or we tick the box saying, yeah, we've got that covered, or we didn't think of that. So I think it would be a huge and really beneficial support for us. But as I say, I'd like to take that back to the leadership team. But I don't have any questions. But my question would have been, what's the catch?
Did I mention, Michelle? There's no, honestly.
I know.
There's no, and what we do, how we basically promote it now is every time we finish a Skills for Growth, we just say to people, do you know anybody else that's got a Scottish business that would qualify? Because it's so much easier for, you know, if you've got another business friend coming to you and going, listen, Stevie and Julie came in and did this thing for me and there was no catch. Like, you believe them, because I know you're thinking, well, why are we on here trying to sell this to you if there's no catch? But there's not. It's like it's funded by the government. It's
and
not
I think there's so much information just now, and what happens is, depends on your own brain space and where you're at, whether or not your mind's open enough to actually pick up, let me get the time to go and listen to this. And I think because there is so much information getting flooded right now, people are just not get the time to even consider it, or they're not taking the time to consider it because this is my opinion, right, of where my head's been. I've not had the capacity to read a lot of the emails and all the information. Just happened to be, it was a good day that I got this. honestly, that sounds really clumsy, but I'm telling you, when you know what it's like, you're juggling everything, and it just happened to strike a chord with me, like Skills for Growth, and I'm like, wait, what is that? Like, but I didn't know what I was thinking. It was a term rather than a a consultancy or an organisation. Thanks for that.
It's totally overwhelming, Michelle. We absolutely get it. And as I say, I think I think the bit that Stevie and I does is brilliant, obviously, but I think that the relationship that you then have when your SDS advisor really gets to know what's going on, and then you can just rely on them to pick up the phone to you or drop you an email when something comes out in the future. So it really, like, it's that kind of, I don't need to keep up with it anymore. I don't need to think about it because somebody else is there to do it for you. You know, and the government knows it's overwhelming. That's why Skills for Growth exists. You know,
I think sometimes I just don't know how to process all the information. What does that mean? How can I use that?
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know what to do with it all, you know, myself. So
you know, there's two great things I heard in there, what you're explaining. So you're about to embark on change, you know, and as we know that, you know, change is the only constant in any organisation. So we tend to think about it as, how do we help you introduce workplace innovation so that change becomes part of people's jobs? And where I could see, you know, some great help that we could offer you with this is that getting them, you know, hearing the employee voice through an independent, we can help make sense of that and maybe make suggestions that, you know, in terms of what you're currently intending to do, and check that out for you. But I think that real signal to the workforce that actually, we care about your voice. So that's why we're going to have somebody in to, help us with this.
Yeah.
That's a big message to the workforce, and that our time then is funded to do that. So what you'll get in the back of that is, yeah, here's some good ideas, go ahead with that, but here's some other ones, and here's the benefit that you'll get. And we're going to cut through the long grass then to say, well, here's some resources or support that could help with some things that come up. So doing a bit of it for you. So I think there's the advantages are just tenfold. I think I love Julie's phrase about why would anybody not want to do this?
Because everybody thinks they're a catch because we're Scottish.
Exactly.
Well, I'm not assuming everybody's Scottish. I'm talking about myself, right? Being Scottish, I always think so.
Well,
what's the catch?
You're at it. I first of all just want to apologise for my misunderstanding, because I was like, when I first came on, I thought, oh, rail related. I was like, it's really not relevant to me at all. But I'm actually really glad that I came back on, because it was interesting.
Yeah. That's great.
We were actually talking about that just at the break there, saying we should have made it clear that Skills for Growth is across all sectors. It's the reason that the link was just that we've been working really closely with SDS, and we just thought it was so important to highlight it to SMEs that are in our rail cluster that are they're not in the rail sector. They're from right across different industries in Scotland. So no, don't worry at all. I'm so glad you stayed though. I was delighted.
I'm glad you came back, because some of that was really quite interesting, and we are going through a period now we're trying to make Turnbull's got a better place to work. It's one of our new, part of our 5-year plan, or new goals and that. So I mean, the things in terms of the bucket, the balloon thing, I thought that was brilliant, because it's true, and there's loads of suggestions that folk come up when we've done surveys with the employees to see what we think we could do better and all that, right? And we come up with all these ideas, but then nobody wants to take them on board, because they're all just floating in that bucket, and it's oh well, we all find other things to do. So I mean, I like that, Ian. But
we love projects like that. The better place to work. There's a lot to be said where there's, and I mean that seriously, where there's fun, more work gets done, but it's actually in a meaningful way. So what we've got is we've got a mini supermarket of ideas, hints and tips that could be used from our experiences of working with others too. We've been doing this for 5 years plus, but there's also other stuff that we do in other organisations that you touch base with that can also factor in this. So there'll be definitely something in that for you, Stacey, so we could really contribute to bringing that alive, and then finding out what is it that blocks folk from moving from idea, suggestion to action, right? So we could probably unpack that for you a little bit, and then try and stimulate that engagement, to take you forward.
Is it time bound if it's government funded? Is it only on for a set period of time, or? And sorry if I missed that when I left and came back again, but.
So it's just been renewed for another year. So it gets renewed at the beginning of the tax year. It's been renewed until March, the end of March next year. So we're in a good period. The only thing is there is a limited amount of funding, so it runs out when all the allocation is gone. But it's a good whack of funding this year. So we're nowhere, at the moment, we are nowhere near it running out. Once we get to Christmas, generally, I can't say exactly how it's, to be fair, it has been really busy at the start of this year, more busy than normal. But usually when we get to Christmas, we start to go, oh, hold on a minute, is this the right type of company to work for? Whereas at the beginning, we're open to conversations with everybody and just seeing how we can help. So yeah, so. And it does keep being renewed. It's just like most government funding, there's no guarantee it'll be here next year, but as Stevie said, we're 5 years in now, and it keeps getting renewed. So while businesses need it, we're here to kind of try and, make sense of all the government stuff that's there for you. And while there's still a need for that, I suspect it'll still be on offer, but yeah. Hopefully.
Actually, we pick up in your questions. I think, Andrew, you had a specific question around criteria.
Yeah.
I think just firstly, before I get onto that criteria, thanks very much, Stevie and Julie. I think that enthusiasm for what you do is kind of really came across in the slides, and I'm sure the businesses do benefit from it as well. So yeah, my question was more around the the criteria for the funding and who's actually eligible. I know, obviously, I think, Stevie, you had a slide up there that said it was SMEs. And if that's the case, what is that based on? Is that just the standard kind of tariff for headcount and turnover?
So it's as straightforward as this, Andrew. It is, you have to be based in Scotland. Technically, you have to have between 5 and 250 employees. So it's not for one-man bands, basically. Yeah. But there is also a bit of a pilot project going on to work with businesses that maybe have 3 or 4 people. There are also advisors that specifically work with businesses that have more than 250 employees. So the criteria from SDS technically is 5 to 250 employees. But in actual fact, other than one-man bands, they're open to conversations. But as if you're based in Scotland, you have between 5 and 250 employees, you qualify definitely.
Right. Okay. That's fine. I suppose the context of the question, I suppose, is sorry, I work for Glasgow Caledonian University, so I have a team who deliver graduate apprenticeships, and they engage with the largest provider of GAs in Scotland, and my team engage with over 175 different organisations, all shapes and sizes, who may wish to engage in foundation apprenticeships, modern apprenticeships, or graduate apprenticeships, which we provide. Yeah. So it's good to know we're all about workforce innovation. We're all about building capacity, whether it's in the rail sector, which we are engaged in highly, or whether it be in the manufacturing sectors or retail, whatever it is. And a lot of our employers that we deal with are kind of across the board. So it's great to give them the opportunity and refer this service, because a lot of them will be really interested in it. They will not know that this service is available to them in order to enhance their business and their skill sets. We do think we're a solution in that. We work with, obviously, Skills Development Scotland very closely as well. I would also just mention, Stevie and Julie, that although Skills Development Scotland will be aware of the funding that comes via themselves, universities and I'm sure colleges will have other pots of money to divert to building capacity. So we've got a couple of funds ourselves from Scottish Funding Council and direct from Scottish Government. So, you know, there is other pools and pots of money. They're all driving to do the same thing, I'm sure. But it's just worth knowing that perhaps that contact into a university might flag up another source of funding.
And if we could do a mutual sharing that, Andrew, that would be fantastic, so that if you've got organisations that you think would be suitable and signposting them via the channel here, and if there's information you think we should have that we should pass on, because Julie and I's approach to this is making sure that we make people aware of as much as we can. So if there's resources, so we would be keen to, if that's an appropriate signpost, so if you're able to share information with us, then we would embrace that wholeheartedly, Andrew.
Good stuff. No, I'd maybe take that one offline, but you know, there was one fund that we're engaged with, which is the National Transition Fund, which is designed to, I suppose, what it does on the tin really, transition skills from one area of a business into another. And in actual fact, it's actually not even designed for people who are employed. They may have succumbed to unfortunate circumstances around COVID, and which has kind of led to a redundancy situation. So how can we give individuals in that position certain specific skills to transition into some other areas of industry, whether it be, a lot of our programs at the moment tend to be around sort of digital and technology, so cyber, software development, etc. But it gives them short courses. It's not always about qualifications, about short, flexible courses. So I think a lot of the audience that you will be dealing with will be interested to hear about those funds as well. So, absolutely.
I mean, it comes up in a Skills for Growth because the whole digital arena is very topical, and we take a sense of that. So there is Digital Boost, which is a product there. But if you've then got the skills elements all well, then that's another good signpost. And if it's a funded one as well, even better. So we could.
That's it.
Isn't that?
Yeah, definitely. Happy to share. Happy to share the funds that we have that might be might be applicable to some of the businesses that use SDS and Scottish Engineering, and some of the businesses that are on this call might be interested in. So,
absolutely. So,
we're recording it. Sorry, I was just going to say we're recording it, so you're feel free to share it. We'll put the recording on. It'll go under the Rail Cluster webpage because we've facilitated this event. It's not related to rail. We'll make it very clear that it's not just solely related to rail, but feel free to share the link. It will be accessible to everybody once Stevie and Julie have had a quick check of it first. But well, you know, it's available, and I think it gives a really good summary and an insight into the programme. So feel free to share it.
Good, that's good. So, what other questions might people have on, or indeed, what about anybody that wants a follow-up or wants to commit and go for a let's do it, Julie? That's a Julie phrase, a let's do it.
Let's do it. That's it. There's no catch, Michelle. There's no catch.
I would just like to discuss first with the leadership team. So when this comes out and then I get your names and things like that, I'll schedule some time on our meeting to like put this on as an agenda item, because there's lots of things they're talking about just now, but I would rather I give them that as well on top so that they think about it. Because we might push that 250 mark, because part of our change is the consolidation of 2 sites. So that would be good to kind of probably talk through that.
Yeah. Still, it's definitely still worth a conversation, because we have delivered it to larger than 250 organisations as well. Yeah.
I've got one on the go at the moment in the Highlands, but that's happening. So let's not discount it, Michelle. Let's then have the conversation so we embrace it.
I was thinking that let's talk about it first, and then we can see.
What we'll do is we'll add in Julie and Stevie's email addresses and contact details so that you've got them if you want to get in touch directly. That's probably a good idea to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Super.
Well, if no one has anything else, we'd scheduled till past, but it was really just to allow people to have a chat. But if nobody else has any further questions just now, I always think with these things, it depends what kind of person you are. I quite often absorb and listen and then have to think about it and then come back with lots of questions. So it might be that, Stevie and Julie, that it's lots of new information. I just want to say thanks so much. It's a fantastic programme, and I hope it's been a useful hour for you and our session, and thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.